Hello and welcome to another video on Homewood Avenue Lights. I'm Rabbit, and in this video I'm going to go into detail on how I made the framework for these pixel trees. Now this is using smart pixels, not the domes, but actual smart pixels, so you can do all the different patterns on them. Now when I decided I wanted to make trees, I wanted the framework to be as least visible as possible. You can't just take the lights and just string them loose because you have to keep them pointed a certain way. As you can tell, there's a lot of wire in these and they kind of have to be pointed one way to make them work right. Now, a lot of people will use strips like this that you can actually put these pixels in and hold them in place, and then if you want to, you can hang them like this. You can get really long strips if you're doing a long tree. But as you can see this a lot more. And you can even get it in black, but it blocks a lot more. I did use this on the matrix screen, but that's on another video. I'll show you how I use that and why I used it for that. On these, I wanted the framework to be as minimal as possible, but yet still function. So I made these out of steel. You can get a good close look at them right here. You can see how it's just these wires kind of put together in a certain way, and that's what's holding the lights in place on the trees. I used the same type of framework on the stars that I built also. I had to set that up a little different to make the stars work, but it's the same technique in making these wire frames to hold these lights. One thing you have to keep in mind when you're going to build a tree or a star or something like that using pixel lights, you are limited to how many lights you can have on one string, so to speak. With Lightorama S4 and the controller I'm using, I am limited to 100 lights per string, which means I can run 100 lights and then I have to run another cord to it from the control box to run another 100. Each one of these trees has 400 lights in it, so there's 4 cords running to this tree to make it all work hooked to the control box. The one thing you have to keep in mind is how many lights in a row and everything else to make it all work out mathematically right. If you count these, there's 25 in a row, and each string, as you can see down here possibly, the line string starts here, there's the cord coming over to the box, and it's one row up, back down, over, up, and back down. So these 4 here together are all on one string together. There's 100 lights. Each tree, there's 4 strings. That's why you see 4 cords hooked to it. Now, the way I made these is, I always say one of the things you really need when you're doing this is time. The way I made these, it takes a lot of time. I'm sure there's somebody going to say, oh, there's a lot easier way to do it, or they prefer to use this stuff. As I've stated all along, these are how we do videos, not how you have to do. It's just what we chose to do to make the framework using these smart pixels. Now the one thing, because I did make them out of metal, that you will need for this kind of work is a little welder of some sort. I happen to have a little 110 volt MIG welder back behind me here. You can pick one up at one of the big box stores real easy. They're not really expensive and they work really well. That's what I used for this. What you start out with is basically just plain old what they call hanger wire. You can get a bundle of this. I believe there's 60 in a bundle, 5 feet long, and they're about 20 bucks for a bundle, so you get a lot of wire in one. Now just for purposes on this, I'm not going to use a full length one here. Set that out of the way. But you'll start with a full length piece of wire, just like say one of these things I had in this bundle right here, and you'll put marks on it every so often, depending on how far apart you want your lights. Our stars, we tightened up the stars a little closer just to get to make it look a certain way. The runners on the stars and the trees are all at the same length. Usually about 2.5 inches apart is about as far as you can go, depending on your light strings. They say there's like a 4-inch spacing between them, but reality is, by the time you take one and you turn one and all that stuff, you got any kind of a twist in a wire, you don't get much more than that far apart. You know, so you're looking at about a 3-inch spacing, maybe. It'll be about the best you're ever going to get. Experiment a little bit, try it and see. I made this little jig piece. It's just 2 pieces of angle iron, a little 1/4-inch rod on it. And I'll see if I can get this in a little closer to you so you can see it. All I did was just tack a little piece of cord on there, did a little measuring, all that, so that when they go like this, they'll pinch together. I set them in the vise, took my time and got it all set right, exactly the right spot, checked it and everything else. And then I just took pieces of tape and held them down to the vise jaws. I took my piece of wire, normally it's 5 feet long. I took and marked it every 2.5 inches, and then I would take that mark and put it down in the vise right on that thing there, and then crank the vise in all the way. And what it would do is it'd take the wire, and you can see on this is one of them I used to check out my spacings on, different spacings. And then finally, I believe this is what I used for the stars on the spacing. But you see how it puts that nice little perfect half round dent in them. Now this is going to sound strange. You have to make 2 of these for each one of them. When you get 2 of them made, you put them together, and that's where it's real important to make sure your spacings are right on each one, so that when you line them up, all the holes line up together. Took the little welder and then tacked 2 of them together, so that you end up, this is obviously a shorter piece, but you can make it as long as you need to or whatever. Those were each made with at least 25 in them, and took and tacked each side of these. And once you do all that, just because of wire, and just free advice on a MIG welder, by the way, this one's a 140 amp, you're really just doing quick tacks. You can easily burn through the wire if you're not real careful on it. Once I got them all tacked together, taking a hammer and using the vise, kind of flattening them and smashing them, you know, getting it good and straight, so it's all this, because by the time you do all that welding, it's kind of crooked and bent, but it flattens out real easy. Then these holes are really close, but sometimes you might have to take a little punch or something to open them up just a touch. But if you do this, these lights have a little groove on them anyway for either putting in the plastic or whatever. You get them right. That one hasn't been opened up yet. These are just some pieces I had left over. I don't know if I actually finished them off or not. You get them right, the lights will actually go into them. You want them snug, make a little half turn, and they'll sit there. You can see right here how these are in here, and they'll hold them still. I made several of these, and yes, if you do the math, there is 400 lights per tree. So each light took 2 bends on 2 pieces of wire. So yes, each tree, 800 bends on that, in, out, in, out. I said you needed a lot of time on this, and I said this is the way we do it. And necessarily the right way, wrong way, or whatever, it's the way we do it. We were real happy with the outcome. When we did the lights, made all them, literally just made the base out of 2x4s, however you want to make it, and then took a piece of conduit, hard conduit pipe, not plastic, but regular metal, mounted it in the base. And these, I literally just took some of the excess and bent it down. These just hooked into that, and then down at the bottom, I made a 1/4 inch bar, made it in a ring, knew the diameter I wanted, set it all on that, and basically kind of pieced it together. One thing I did do, as you can see here on the bottom, I took and I anchored each side of this corner ring, bottom ring, down to the stand. That helps hold them steady. If the wind blows, they aren't flopping around. Plus, when you go to carry them in and out from your display, it's a little easier to carry. These things are set up now. I can literally just tip them over to the side, grab the pipe, and carry them. Makes it nice and easy. You have to keep in mind, though, when you're designing and getting ready to build it, you gotta make sure your sections of lighting work out right with the number of lights you're using. I have a video on here about how to set one of these up in the software for S4 software from Lightorama and Pixel Editor. Make sure you watch that. That'll give you a little idea. Like the trees, they have some presets in there, make it real easy for you to set it up into your software so you can program them real easy. The stars and that are more of a custom deal. I explain how you can actually set them in there and put customs in. My matrix screen, I'll do a video on how it's made and all that stuff, because it is made a little different because I wanted it to look different. My matrix screen, yes, they have standard screens that you can put in, just almost a click, 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 and it's in your system. I did that one customized, and I'll explain why. If you want to understand on that, on the customizing, make sure you watch the video on custom pixel props. I go into just showing you how I had to go, a few little tips that I didn't realize. Took me a little bit to figure out, but maybe help you out figuring them out. But like I say, this is how we did the trees. I'm sure there's easier ways of doing it. This is what the look we wanted. Like I say, we wanted the framework to be as non-obvious as possible because we do the complete wraparound tree, 360 degrees. There's 16 of these strands all the way around. I wanted you to be able to be at the front, be able to see the lights in the back. So it gave better effects on everything. So make sure, like I say, you take your time, think about it. Have a lot of time depending on what you're doing. You don't want to rush this because trust me, the last thing you want to do is put a prop out there and then you spend half the season trying to fix the prop or keep the prop working. I always say start early, start real early, do some test runs, make sure everything's right, the wiring of them's right, everything's working right. Easier to do that in your garage or shop or wherever you're building these things than out in the dead of winter while you're trying to get your show working and everything else. So do a lot of testing on them, whatever you end up building, but hope this explains how we actually did these. Yes, there was a lot of time, a lot of bends between the stars and trees. There is 1,200 bulbs, so that was, does math, 2,400 bends with a vise. Tack welding, there was a lot of time involved in them, but they came out what I wanted them to look like. This is what we wanted. So if this helps you to think about yours a little bit more, or give you another idea on how to maybe do something, that's all we're trying to do, just show you how we did it. Not necessarily right or wrong, just how we did it. So hope this helps some. Until next time, make sure you hit subscribe and like the video, and we'll see you on the next one. God bless, be safe.